opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker. He was also our keynote speaker at the very first Unleashed. We got such great feedback. We've developed such a good relationship with him. We wanted him to bring him back for our largest Unleashed ever and be able to speak to you guys again this morning. Coach Donnie Campbell is a math teacher and a high school basketball coach from Kansas who was plucked out of obscurity when Jason Sudeikis, the American actor and star of the 5-time Emmy award-winning show Ted Lasso, revealed to Stephen Colbert on The Late Show that Campbell was in part the impetus for the lead character he plays with such wit and wisdom. It was back in the late 1990s when Jason played basketball at Shawnee Mission West and Donnie was his coach. Little did Campbell know that all the pearls of wisdom he was dropping on Jason and the team would appear years later and make an indelible impression on the millions around the world. Today, Campbell has been busy making appearances on local and national television, including ABC's Good Morning America and NBC's The Today Show. In addition to teaching, he is now speaking to organizations and companies about leadership and specifically how important it is to instill strong values in the people you work with. He credits his leadership skills to his positive attitude and the mentors that prepared him for success both in the classroom and on the basketball court.
I was at an event a couple weeks ago. Oh, thanks for having me this morning. What an honor to be here. I was at an event a couple weeks ago, and I didn't feel like they were all really very geared up as this group is. And I said, okay, I'm gonna get you guys all in a defensive stance. Because I always told my players, if you're in a stance, you got a chance. So I went down in the stance and ripped my pants. So my wife said, don't be doing that anymore, Donnie. So I want to tell you a story. I'm a storyteller about the day my life changed forever. As you already know, my name is Donnie Campbell, and I was a high school basketball coach for 30 years. I love coaching. I love it. I love the smell of a gym. I love taking a group of kids with different personalities and talents and molding them into a team that's committed to each other, wants to sacrifice for each other, that all wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. Well, that changed one day when I'm walking down the hallway to my math classroom. A colleague sees me down the hall and says, hey, there's the famous basketball coach that inspired Jason Sudeikis' new show, Ted Lasso. I didn't know anything about it. So I hurried up and got into my classroom and got on the computer and did my research and found the show. That night went home. My wife and I started watching it, and as millions of people throughout the world, we fell in love with it. Very endearing show. As we're watching it that night, my wife points up to the TV screen and says, yeah, Donnie, that's you. I didn't see that either. However, I did see many of the lessons that I taught Jason and his teammates 30 years earlier being applied in a show about a football soccer coach. You know, it's incredibly surreal. In fact, it's humbling to know that you made such an impact in somebody's life. And it's thrilling when I hear my name mentioned by Jason when he talks about the show. But I'm here today to talk to you about my firm belief, and it's an honor for me, and I'm here with great pride to talk to you about my firm belief in the power of kindness and the power of believing in people to bring out the very best in them. This is a sign that I would put up, very similar to many signs that I would put up in my locker rooms to help inspire and motivate my players. Now, before I jump into my leadership lessons I've learned in over 30 years of coaching and 40 years teaching, I know there's a question that you guys all and gals have for me. And as I get interviewed, I get interviewed throughout the country. This is the number one question I get asked. What kind of basketball player was Jason Sudeikis? Well, Jason was a left-handed point guard, shot the ball pretty well, handled the ball pretty well, and at times he did some things with the ball that I didn't particularly like. You know, some behind-the-back passes, some no-look passes, some jump-up-in-the-air gyrate passes. And he didn't always play the kind of defense I wish he'd play. In fact, it was brought out by Jason himself that I nicknamed him Jason Sudeikis. I took the D out of his name because he didn't particularly like to play defense. You know, I have a lot of stories that I could tell about Jason, that team I coached at Shawnee Mission West. You know, one of the stories I remember, we're playing in a tournament, and I talked to a guy last night who was coached by Bud Lathrop. And if you don't know who Bud Lathrop was, he was a great coach at Raytown South, legendary coach, Hall of Fame coach. And he'll know what I'm talking about. There he is. He'll know what I'm talking about, the Lee Summit tournament. So we were playing in this tournament, and during one of the tournament games, Jason would be wide open underneath the basket. His teammate would give him a perfect pass, and instead of shooting the bunny shot, instead of the wide open layup, he kept passing it out to his teammates so they could score. And I didn't know what was going on. I found out in the locker room after the game that Jason knew that he was close to the assist record for the tournament. He's trying to break it. His teammates thought that was pretty funny too. Coach, not so much. You know, I miss a lot of things about coaching high school basketball. You know, I miss Friday night games. You know, two teams competing hard, two coaches coaching hard, the smell of popcorn, the cheerleaders, the band. And after those Friday night games, we would always practice at 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Well, these kids were coming in, to those practices, including Jason, like they'd been up all night. Again, I didn't know what was happening. I said, that's fine. We'll just start practicing at 5 a.m. What I didn't know was, after our Friday night games, Jason was traveling throughout Kansas City to different comedy clubs and watching different comedians perform. He was already starting to think about his future. You know, and he was never late to practice, ever, and he never missed practice. And I do remember this about him. He was a great teammate, too. One of his teammates has a T-shirt business here in Kansas City. And during COVID, and I'm sure many of you know about this, his business was really struggling, as many businesses were, correct? So somehow Jason found out about it and said, hey, send me those T-shirts and I'll start wearing them on the show. His business skyrocketed. They couldn't keep the T-shirts on the shelves. That kind of caring and commitment by Jason, he still had for his teammate 30 years since they'd been together. Isn't that the same kind of caring commitment that you want from your teams? He still had it after 30 years. To me, it's amazing. Now, I want you to think about this. What does it mean to be a coach? What does it mean to be a leader? To me, a true coach or leader is someone who sees potential in a team and does everything they can to help inspire, motivate, guide that team to be successful. Ultimately, to be great. Ted Lasso says, I do love a locker room. It smells like potential. And I'm the same way. I love the smell of a locker room. You know, when I first started coaching, I really didn't know that. I was focused on one thing, and one thing only, and that was winning, period. Winning. I was going to do everything I could to make sure that my teams were the most skilled, talented group of players that stepped on that basketball floor. We were going to beat anybody that kept us from that state crown. How'd I do that? Practice. We worked on all the fundamentals, zone defense, fast breaking, man-to-man defense, reverse passing. We worked them. I worked them. And I want you to think of the toughest coach you've ever had. I'm sure Bud Lathrop was a tough coach, right? Multiply that by 10, because I worked those kids long and hard. I had those kids so prepared, so fundamentally sound, so skilled that we were going to beat anybody. And that first season, after getting them so prepared, I led our team to a 3-18 record. And for you that don't know what that means, that's 3 wins. Okay, Michael, we got a fairly smart group in here. 18, right? So I had a lot of questions. If you remember from the show, Ted Lasso was hired to coach a soccer team even though he knew absolutely nothing about soccer. In fact, he said, you could fill 2 internets with what I don't know about football. And that's exactly how I felt coaching basketball, a sport at that time I'd played and coached for over 20 years. So what was missing? What was I doing wrong? How many have been in those situations? I'm sure it was like this when DenQ started, correct? A lot more losses at the beginning, right? Got a lot of questions, don't we? Correct? Still, I was the same way. I was a young coach. What was missing? What was I doing wrong? So I went out and I just did a lot of reading, because a leader's a reader. I did a lot of reading. And I came across this one day, this definition of success by the legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden, who many consider to be the greatest coach of any sport of all time. And his definition of success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you did your best to become the best you are capable of becoming. Let that sink in a second. As I did, it really resonated with me. Success was not about winning. It was about developing my players to be the best people, the best person individually they can be. I realized that when you create better people, you create winning teams. Now, I've spoken at a lot of events, and I had a blast last night, talking to my Connecticut boys, meeting other people. What an unbelievable team you have here. And I'm not just saying that, Michael, Danny. You guys got an unbelievable team. And the partnerships you've created is unbelievable. The vision you have, that's leadership. I'm so impressed. I go to events all over the country. I was just one in Chicago. That's hard to do. That's leadership, though. You have to have a vision. Then you have to have a plan. But those partnerships are so important. And you're all here because of that. So we totally changed what we were doing. So that second season, after focusing on developing our players to be better people first, better basketball players second, we ended up winning 6 games. We were 6-15. Doubled our output. The third season, we were 11-10 and had a winning record. And I left that school to go to Shawnee Mission West, where I coached Jason Sudeikis. 2 years after leaving that school, they ended up winning a state title. That culture had changed very quickly in just 4 years, just by focusing on developing your people to be better people first, better basketball players second. You know, you can develop your teams to be really, really good at what they do, to be really skilled at what they do. But that doesn't mean they're going to work together. That doesn't mean they're going to play together. But if you can develop your teams to be each individually person, to be the best person they can be, I promise you, that will be sustainable success. I realized very quickly, it's not about the X's and O's. It's about the Johnnies and Joes. And I coach girls too. It's not about the X's and O's. It's about the Johnnies and Joes. Now, how can you create a culture that focuses on hard work, respect, and teamwork? Well, I call it your MVP. Your MVP, which is your mission, your values. Your mission is your why. Your values are your non-negotiables. And of course, you have to have a plan, or it's just a dream, right? You have to have a vision. Of course, our mission was to create better people who would then become better players. And what I saw through the years, it's amazing to me. When we started focusing on developing our players to be better people first, better basketball players second, you know what happened? The wins started taking care of themselves. Does that make sense? It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. As a leader, setting the right example makes all the difference. Now, I like to get down here. Is that okay? I like to be around you guys, all right? I like to connect. That's what I like to do, okay? So if I go off script here, who knows, okay? I was so very, very fortunate when I graduated from Kansas State University. I was a quarterback at Kansas State. I played basketball as well. Had a short stint with the Houston Oilers. I was a quarterback. I was a backup to a backup to a backup to Warren Moon. And when I got cut, I went back to Kansas State, did my student teaching, and I knew that I wanted to coach. It's kind of ironic. My quarterback coach at Kansas State ended up coaching Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, one of the all-time great guys. And we used to come out for practice, and we always did center quarterback exchanges. We started with the bare fundamentals, correct? Bare fundamentals. And then we always had small talk. Coach would talk to us, talk to us. And he said one day to me, he said, Donnie, I heard that you're going to be you want to teach math and coach. And I said, yeah, Coach, I do. And he goes, you idiot. He goes, you're a math major. You can be an engineer. You can be a doctor. You can be whatever you want to be. And you want to be a teacher and a coach. I said, yeah, Coach, I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about making a difference. He said, okay, Donnie. He gave me this question. I was probably 19, 20 years old. He said, do you want to be liked or do you want to be respected? Okay, I'm 19 years old. The wheels are turning, right? Wheels are turning. And of course, I gave him a pretty good answer. I said, I want to be both. He said, you can't have both, Donnie. You can't have both. You want to be respected. If you'll show people that you care and you tell them the truth, you'll earn their respect. And that's what you guys have done. I guarantee, I can sense it. I can sense it here. You have to be a truth teller. You can't have trust without honesty, can you? And sometimes you have to say some things you really don't want to say as a leader, don't you? So when I graduated, I left. I opened up a brand new school here in Kansas City, brand new, with a tremendous high school basketball coach. Great coach, great leader. And we had no tradition to fall back on. We'd broken away from another school because there was too many kids, right? So we had to start a new high school. So we're starting a brand new program, as you guys did a few years ago. Brand new. So the first game we played was against the team that we had broken away from, the high school, correct? So you don't think it wasn't competitive. Everybody knew each other, right? It was competitive. And we traveled to their place and played the game. Well, during the game, their coach was up and down the sidelines yelling and screaming at the officials. How many have seen that before from a coach? Yeah, I've got daughters that played soccer. Go to third grade Saturday morning soccer games. You'll see the same thing, right? Correct? It was relentless. He was on those officials from the tip-off till the very end. We ended up losing the game. And I really felt like at the end of the game, they got some calls because he had intimidated officials, which I didn't think was fair. So on the bus ride home that night, I'm sitting by Coach. I said, Coach, that wasn't fair tonight. That guy was relentless on those officials. I really felt like it hurt our team. I said, all you did was coach your kids. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. He looked at me, he says, Donnie, if I have to act like a horse is behind to win games, it's probably time for me to get out of it. You see, our head coach, my mentor, had standards and values about how you treat people. He believed in treating everyone with respect and kindness. It was such a great example for me. Now, as leaders, correct, you're a doer. Agreed? Doers are going to make mistakes. The last game I ever coached at the last school I was at, I didn't set a very good example for my players. I felt like the officials were doing a poor job, and I was on them. I admit it. I was on them. I felt like they weren't working as hard as the players were or the coaches, and that bothered me. And I was on them. We ended up losing the game. Well, after the game, I would go around, and of course I talked to my players after the game. I'd go around and make sure stuff was picked up, right? I'd go behind the bench, and it always was. Our locker room was spotless because we had a belief with our players. We talked about this a lot. Always leave the world a little bit better place than what it was. It's a leadership lesson right there, isn't it? Always leave the world a little bit better place than what it was. Our locker room was spotless. Then when I walked out in the hallway, I walked down the other hallway, and went to the visiting, or excuse me, not the visiting, but the officials' locker room. And we supplied them towels to go get their towels, take it to the hamper so they get cleaned. Well, I walked in there, and on one of the benches was an old flip phone that one of the officials had left. So I go over there, open it up, and I don't know anything. So I step outside, and I could look all the way down the hallway, and I could see these double doors going outside of the parking lot, and I could see those 3 officials walking out in the parking lot to their car to go home after the game. So I want to get that official his cell phone. I take off sprinting. I'm running as hard as I can, and I slam those doors open. Those officials hear that commercial, and they turn around. Their eyes get about this big around. They take off running. They're scared to death. They're running. I said, no. Wait, Mike, I have your cell phone. So I caught up with him, and I'm breathing heavy, cracked, and Mike goes, how did you know it was my cell phone? I said, when it opened it up, it had 32 missed calls. I don't know about this group. 32 missed calls. Come on. We got to have some fun, don't we? Boy, I thought, talking to everybody last night, we had a sharper group than that. I'll take that off my keynote, okay? My wife, that's her favorite joke. In fact, when I had my keynote, when we worked on it, this wasn't even in there. My wife says, Donnie, you got to tell that joke. It's awesome. So I did, and so I realized after that first year, that disastrous first season, we were 3-18, I needed to change. Now, I needed players that were willing to change too. Ted Lasso says, you say impossible, this is one of my favorite quotes. You say impossible, but all I hear is I'm possible. I love that. I'm possible. We knew we were looking for players, I'm possible type of players, who believed in themselves, who wanted to get better, who wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves, which would create a team of we're possible players. We were looking for we're possible players that next year. And with that in mind, we came up with our values, which is what we wanted to see from everyone in our program. These are our non-negotiables. We felt like if we wanted to be the most successful team we could be, we needed these values. Trust. Just talked about that earlier, didn't we? You can't have trust without honesty, correct? How do you develop trust? Consistency, dependability. I'll say it again. How do you develop trust? Consistency, dependability. It only takes, hopefully I didn't ruin my dependability today being late, because I don't like to be late. Second, accountability. Accountability. Holding each other accountable. As a leader, you need to be the standard. You need to hold yourself accountable every day. And if you have teams that hold each other accountable, those are powerful teams. You mark my word. Third is commitment. We were looking for players who were committed to the team first, period. Trust, accountability, and commitment. Secret sauce right there. Think about your team. Does everybody trust each other? Does everybody hold each other accountable? Do you have people who are committed, who embrace their roles? Those are the teams that, bottom line is this, teams that work hard and work hard together and no one cares who gets the credit, those are the best teams. Let's just be honest. Every team I've had, they work hard together, and no one cares who gets the credit. Those are the best teams. Every team needs players with high character to be successful. I think I mentioned that we started a brand new high school basketball program. Myself, right out of college, I was an assistant for a tremendous coach. And we had tryouts. First set of tryouts. It's a big school. How many have gone through tryouts? Okay. How many have had to do it as a coach? It's not fun, is it? No. It's one of those hats I had to wear that I didn't like as a coach, telling a young man he had not made the team. So what coach would do, he would have me go into the gym and bring the player that we were going to cut into his office in the locker room and tell them, and of course, they had not made the team. I was kind of the grim reaper, if you will, right? Not a fun job. So one night, he has me bring a player in who I think's the best player, period. So I thought he was going to bring him in and say, hey, keep doing what you're doing a great job, right? I bring him into the office. Coach cuts him, the best player. And I can still remember that young man's look of disbelief in his eyes, and I'm sure me being a young, right out of college assistant, correct? I'm sure I had the same disbelief. So I escorted the young man, after Coach talked to him, into the locker room, back out to the gym to get his stuff to go home. And I came back and I said, Coach, I think you just cut the best player. And he looked at me and he said this, Donnie, starting any program, we have to have people we can count on. We have to have people we can trust. Bottom line is we have to have people we can lose with. Because when you first start out, you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win. You better have the right people on the boat. You better get them in the right seats, and you better get the wrong people off the boat. That's what he was doing. And when I got to be a head coach, I did the same thing. I cut some of the better players because they weren't committed to doing what we wanted to do. And I knew starting that foundation, we had to have the right folks on our ship. So very, very important. And this is a great quote. Now, you can pick captains, but you can't pick leaders. Those that control the locker room control the team. You better have the right folks on your team. I knew that. This is one of my favorite quotes from Ted Lasso about handling adversity. You know what the happiest animal on earth is? It's goldfish. You know why? It's got a 10-second memory. I love that. It's about handling adversity, isn't it? You know, somebody asked me at a place I spoke at, Coach, is that you? I said, kind of. They got better writers on Ted Lasso than me. But I always told my players two things. Number one, how do you handle a mistake? You recognize it, you admit it, you learn from it, and you forget it. You'll be a goldfish. You move on. Be where your feet are. Can't change what's behind you, can you? What you can change is what you do right now, because that's what, importantly, will affect your future. That's how I told my kids that. Be a goldfish. A good teammate needs to be coachable. That first year that I was a head coach, again, if you've been in a brand new position, I was a brand new young head coach, and it was a smaller school. When I interviewed for the job, no one in Kansas City interviewed it for it except for me. It was the worst job in Kansas City. They had won 3 games in 3 years. I was the only one they interviewed. So I went back to our head coach and I said, Coach, it's not a very good job. He looked at me and he said, you know, you're not going to get a good job, Donnie. You've never been a head coach. You're a little bit of humble pie there, right? He said, you got to take a bad job and turn it into a good job. So that's what I tried to do. Well, that first season, it was a smaller school. We didn't have tryouts. So I had a young man who's the best player. I also coached him in football. He's a heck of a quarterback. He's a really good athlete, a good player. However, he was not very coachable. And if you're not very coachable, you're not going to get better, are you? And he was a terrible teammate. So because we didn't have tryouts, I would have numerous meetings with him to try to guide him, to try to direct him on how to be a leader and how to be a good teammate. And I'd had about 4 or 5 sit-downs with him. One day, it was a Saturday morning practice. I'd had enough. He says something to one of my assistants. I kicked him off the team. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my coaching career. I had to kick him off the team. I can still remember him throwing his practice gear at me and cussing me out as he left the gym. Tough. It was tough. About 2 days later, his dad wants a meeting with me. Now, we didn't have cell phones back then. We didn't even have email. I got a voicemail. So you think I'm looking for this meeting with his dad? No way. And I think my AD and my principal must have been on a Caribbean cruise because they weren't within 5 miles, 500 miles of with this meeting, right? So I was on my own. I was out on the island, correct? So 2 days later, we meet in my office. And before I can sit down, his dad said to me, Coach, thank you. Thank you for holding my son accountable. He's been on numerous teams for 10 years, and he's torched every team he's been on. He thinks rules don't matter to him. He can do whatever he wants. Thank you for teaching me a great lesson. Hopefully, he'll take this lesson and be able to play on a sport sometime, be on a team again. But more importantly, Coach, I know that he's going to have a job one of these days. And he's going to be told to do something. He might not like it, but he's got to do it. Thank you for teaching him a great lesson. After that meeting, my wife and I got married that year. Now, she still wanted to marry me after that 3-18 season. I think she's not, this guy's a better husband than he is basketball coach, right? So we got married. We've been married 35 years, and it's my proudest accomplishment. She's the best, thank you. My proudest accomplishment. She's my best friend. So I invited that young man that I kicked off the team to our wedding. He showed up. He thanked my wife and I, congratulated both of us, and we're still into contact to this day. In fact, I should be getting a text any day, basketball season starting. He always wants to meet with me and talk basketball because now he's a basketball coach. And he has sons. It goes full circle, doesn't it? It goes full circle. I love those conversations with my former players. I relish those things. I miss being around my players. Sometimes players need to be told what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Rather be ruined by praise instead of saved by criticism. I mean, that's human nature, isn't it? Correct? I had a young man, tremendous shooter. In fact, he holds the three-point shooting record in Kansas. He made 9 in one game. I mean, he's a great shooter. Great shooter. I mean, I never told him not to shoot because if he shot it, it normally went in. However, he couldn't guard this clicker. He couldn't keep people in front of him. He wasn't very athletic. So after his junior year, going into his senior year, he might be a cut because he'd score 15 but give up 25. So I was going to have a hard conversation with him after his junior year. When I have conversations with parents, players, I like to use the sandwich principle. Now that's debated throughout the country, I can promise you. But me, I like to be positive. So I like to start out with something positive, some praise. In the middle, some constructive criticism, and then end with a positive. That's me. Now again, we have those meetings sometimes that we want it to be win-win, correct? And you do your best to be positive. I still say positive, but sometimes they'll just win-lose. But I still was positive, and I still taught those parents, whatever it might be, players with respect and kindness. No matter how volatile they were, I did that. So I told him, I said, hey, you're a terrific shooter. You work hard in practice. You're a good teammate. However, you have to get better defensively. You can't keep people in front of you. But I really believe if you get in the weight room and get in better shape between now and next season, that you can be great on both ends. I really believe that. Now, one of two things are going to happen here after that meeting. He's either going to pout and mope and blame everybody, correct? Or he's going to take the bull by the horns and get better, which is exactly what he did. He worked his tail off between when we had that meeting and when we played the next year. This young man, that next season was great on both ends. Great. He ended up being an all-league player and getting a college scholarship. His commitment showed us that we could trust him. His commitment showed his team and me we could trust him. He's also a coach now. I haven't had a text from him for a few years, so maybe he's figured it out. But it goes full circle, doesn't it, huh? Sometimes you'll find the right person for your team where you least expect it. I want you to think about your team right now. Is there a diamond in the rough? Is there somebody that just with a little guidance and support could be really good? Think about that right now. About 5 or 6 years after Jason had graduated, I had a really good team coming back. In fact, I felt like they were a state tournament team, maybe a state championship team. In the fall, a young man had moved in. And the kids had open gym. And at that time in Kansas, I couldn't be at the open gyms before the season started. So I'd heard from the kids that this kid was, hey, coach, we got this kid that moved in. He's really, really good. So, I'm starting to, wanting to know about this. So I snuck up in the rafters at Shawnee Mission West and watched open gym. This kid was really good. He's about 6'8", he was athletic. He was one of the better players. So that next morning, what do you think I did getting down to the counseling? I mean, I skipped down there, right? I skipped down there. Wow, we got a state championship now, right? So I talked to the counselor. She said, well, we got kind of a problem. Number one, he's flunking 5 out of 7 classes. So he's not even eligible, probably. Number two is his attendance. He shows up maybe 2 out of 5 days, and he's got some discipline referrals. He's gotten some trouble. So going into tryouts, I wasn't going to keep this young man. I didn't want that headache. I didn't want to upset the apple cart, right? How many know what I'm talking about? When somebody new comes on your team, you're a little bit worried about the dynamics changing, yes or no? Yeah, you all been there, haven't you? I didn't want to ruin our chemistry because we had great chemistry with these kids. They loved playing together. So about the second night of tryouts, I'm going to cut this young man. I'm going to bring him in and cut him. There's a knock on my door, and it's 2 of my senior leaders. They said, Coach, can we talk to you? I said, sure. And they said, Coach, you got to keep him. You got to keep him. He could really help us. I kind of gave one of these, right? I said, okay, we'll keep him. We'll keep him. But you better make sure he's in school every day. You better make sure he stays up on his grades. You better make sure he stays out of trouble. That season, he was an unbelievable player for us. We made it to the state tournament. We were state runner-up. Probably would have won it all if my best player wouldn't have broken his ankle in the semifinal game. We were state runner-up, and this young man got a Division I basketball scholarship. There's a lot of lessons here. Number one is this. Everybody deserves a second chance, as this young man did, correct? Number two is always listen to your team. And I watch. My wife says, I don't know how good a coach you are, but you're a pretty good judge of character. And I watch. You guys listen. That's a great skill to be able to listen. I always listen to my players. I always listen to my team members. Why? It empowers them. They feel like they have a piece of the pie. It empowers them. And thirdly, during the whole year, I admitted to our players that what if I wouldn't have kept him? That would have been a huge mistake, wouldn't it? I think as leaders, you need to admit when you make a mistake, because allow your team members to be comfortable them making a mistake, because we can't grow unless we're willing to be uncomfortable, right? And when you're uncomfortable, you're going to make mistakes. I wanted our kids to be comfortable being uncomfortable, correct? Because that's how we get better, isn't it? Most of my lessons are through my own frustrations. 3 things there. You're in my class right now. They know when I repeat something, it's pretty important. Number 1, have an open door policy. Number 2, listen. Listen to your team. And number 3, admit when you make a mistake. Those are 3 great lessons right there. Taking accountability builds better relationships and powerful teams. We had a team coming back. This is the last school I was at, and it wasn't one of our better teams. I can't think of a team in 30 years that I coached that I didn't love coaching, because every year's different, correct? Different kids, different teams you play. I love that. I miss that, of kind of thinking about how we're going to do this and do that, you know, how we're going to adapt to this. And I love that. Well, we're playing a rival school one night at home. And on paper, they were better than us. Our kids played their fannies off. With about 4 seconds to go, we're up by 1, but they have the ball on their end, and their coach calls timeout. He brings his group into their huddle, you know, to drop a play so they can win it, correct? And of course, I have my kids on the other end talking about how we're going to defend that out-of-bounds play. Whistle blows, both teams go out onto the floor, and 2 of my kids don't do what I tell them to do in the timeout. They get a kid wide open. The kid hits a shot at the buzzer, and we lose by 1. Now, I can promise you in the locker room after the game, I was no Ted Lasso. I said some things to those 2 kids I felt terrible about. I really did. Felt bad. So on the ride home, I felt even worse. So when I got home, I texted both of them and said, hey, I want to meet you for lunch tomorrow. We didn't have practice on Saturday morning, which means we didn't have a game on Tuesday. I always gave them the weekends off if we didn't have a game on Tuesday. So we met on Saturday morning at one of my favorite burger joints. So waitress took our order. And I said, guys, I want to apologize last night. I said some things to you in the locker room I shouldn't have said. You guys have been awesome. You're what personifies our basketball team. You're good teammates, you work hard, you're coachable. I just didn't do a good job during the timeout explaining to you how things needed to be defended, and I definitely didn't get you ready with practice for that out-of-bounds play. And before I could, and I still get chills because I can still see these two young men. They both stood up and said, no, Coach, it was our fault. You did have us ready, and you did explain very explicitly how you wanted that sideline out-of-bounds play guarded. It's our fault. Those are leaders. That team ended up making it to the state tournament. I think we lost our first round game, but we over-excelled where we should have been by people holding each other accountable. And if you have teams that hold each other accountable as those kids did, those are powerful teams. Now, you can have your vision, correct? You can have your mission. You can have all those things in place, can't you? But if you don't have a plan, it's just a dream, agreed? Correct? For us, our plan, it all starts with practice. Out of anything I miss the most is practice. I love sweating with my players. I miss that more than anything. A classroom to me was the gym. And I always believe this, the gym was the greatest classroom and adversity is the greatest teacher. So I was going to make practice hard. In fact, we had a philosophy, we're going to make practice like games and games like practice. Now I want you to think of coaches that you've had, correct? And it ran you to death. How many had those kind of coaches? Yeah, I did too. I think every coach I had was a masochist. I think he went home every night thinking about how can we make this even worse. And I'm from Western Kansas. Western Kansas, and it was hot during football season. And my coach, my middle school coach, was a Green Beret. So that's how he treated us. I mean, he was tough. I didn't want our practices to be physically challenging. I wanted them to be mentally challenging. I wanted them to think, to concentrate. How do we do that? With disadvantage drills. 4-on-3, 5-on-4, 6-on-4. For example, 5-on-4. That's a tough drill. 4 people guarding 5. It's a hard drill. And you have to communicate, correct? Because you end up with 2 people on the ball. And then it's really a disadvantage on the backside. So they had to really communicate. Think about your team. If there's any issues with your team, if there is, I promise you, with trust, if there's an issue with trust, it starts with miscommunication. It just does. We were getting our kids to talk. You know, we do such a great job in this world now communicating, but we don't talk, do we? Correct? Our practices, if you walked into our practices, you never saw me saying much. Our kids, it was just unbelievable. People that come watch our practices, Coach, I've never seen anything like it. Your kids are loud, because they talked. With defense, which was our specialty, you had to talk, which created great trust. So we were focusing on that. But we were also trying to focus on, more importantly, adversity, because this put them in tough spots. Because we know that successful people have had to overcome some sort of adversity, yes or no? You betcha. We were getting them to embrace it. And the improvement that our kids made through the years, as basketball players, yeah, but as people, it was unbelievable what we saw from them. I miss that. I miss seeing that improvement from our players. They still talk about it. I was in Nashville speaking, and one of my players is the all-time leading scorer at Vanderbilt. His name's Matt Frigie. I coached him at Shawnee Mission West. He made me a really smart coach. I wasn't very smart when I didn't have him. He was 6'8", 6'9", high school, ended up being 6'11", was first-round draft choice. He was a great player. And that's what he talked about. When I was there speaking this summer, we went out to eat together, and he wants me to come coach his kids at this private school. Coach, they don't have any discipline. We need you, Coach. I said, yeah, like my wife's going to let me leave our house and come coach your kids at this private school and leave our grandkids. But he said, I go to their practices, I don't see the same thing that I saw in our practices. Your practices were hard. And they had us so prepared. That was so important to me. I miss that. Practice was so important to us. Be a practice player first. That's how important it was to us. That was in our locker room. How many have kids playing summer basketball? Correct? Okay. What's happened now? I'm just going to throw this out there, okay? Because I've been doing this a long time and I'm old. I know I look old. Is overseas, they practice 5 days and play one game. In the United States, they practice maybe 2 times a week and they play 6 games on the weekend. Yes or no? What is happening in the NBA, and I don't know the percentage, but it's going foreign, isn't it? There's more foreign players because those kids are more fundamentally sound. They're not as athletic, but they're more fundamentally sound and they have a better basketball IQ. So if I had what I did with my group of kids, and I'm just throwing this to you parents out there that have kids playing, we played a lot of 3-on-3. A lot. To develop their skills and for them to work together. You can't hide 3-on-3. You can hide 5-on-5. 5-on-5 at a young, how many have kids go to, like I've had a grandson, 6 years old. He goes and plays a game. He's so much more athletic than everybody else. He just out-athletes. How many sees that at a young age, like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade? That's the worst thing that could happen to him because he's not developing skills. He's just a better athlete. Eventually that gap will close, won't it? And then he won't have any skills. And lastly is I'll get telephone calls all the time when I coached. Coach, I got a 1 man. He's going to be unbelievable for you. And I never cared if they were a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4. We didn't number our players. You hear what I'm saying? We didn't number them. I wanted kids that could play. I didn't want a 1, I didn't want a 2. I wanted a kid that could play and wanted to be coached. If you're a parent, this is what you want to do. Okay, I'm just giving you, is number 1 is this. Are they having fun? If they're not having fun, if you got to drag them to practice, then I wouldn't be having them in that event, have them doing whatever they're doing. I wouldn't do it. If you got to drag them there, it's not good for the kid, and you're going to develop a poor relationship with your son or daughter. Number 2 is this, is that coach focus on fundamentals. It's all about the fundamentals. I don't care what it is. It's fundamentals. Focus on that, and then get stronger in the weight room. One of my proudest moments of my coaching career was winning our first state title. Nothing like winning a state. How many have been on a state championship team? It's unbelievable, isn't it? Correct? It's unbelievable. I've played on state championship teams, and I've coached state championship teams. Nothing like it. I couldn't tell you what the score. I couldn't tell you who we played. I just remember the smiles on those kids' face. That's what I remember. I remember those kids. After the game, my principal, who was a Big 12 football official, who officiated me when I played at Kansas State in the old Big 8, who hired me, came up to me after the game and put his arm around me and said, Coach, I'm so proud of your kids, your coaches, and you about winning this state championship. What an unbelievable accomplishment. But you know something, Coach? The most important thing that I love and respect about you is you understand what's really important is how these kids end up 5 and 10, 15 years from now. And that's so important to me. So important to me. We had created a successful team. We had built a successful team focused on respect, hard work, and teamwork. And it came about when you create a culture of winning starts with creating good people. And that was it. That was it. That's what you have here. I can tell. I mean, I'm not as dumb as I look. Michael, no comment, please. All right? Okay? That's what you have, and that's special. That's special. That's hard to create. That's leadership. Sometimes when you lose, you win. Playing a game one night against a team that was so much better than us. They were a state tournament team, and they beat us by 20. It could have been 50, but the other coach is a good friend of mine. Could have been. I mean, after the game, I went in the locker room. I told our kids, hey, I'm proud of the effort. I was always positive. Always positive. Hey, we got beat by a better team tonight, kids. But I know you're going to come back tomorrow practice, and you're going to be a goldfish, and you're going to work your tail off, and we're going to get better. We're going to keep our eyes on the prize. Always begin with the end in mind. And I always wanted to leave something positive. And I got interviewed on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and he said, if your players, if we asked them, what would be a quote that you gave them that they would remember? And it would be this. This is my favorite quote. You don't have to win a championship to be a champion. You don't have to win a championship to be a champion. It's about how we do things, isn't it? Correct? Developing trust, accountability, and commitment. Now, you guys don't know me that well. You've only been around me last night, 40 minutes today. But let me tell you something. I'm a competitive son of a gun. I don't like to lose, period. That's a strength and that's a weakness. I got that from my mom. My mom was the most sincere, kind, authentic, spiritual, never drank, never smoked, never said a bad word about anybody. But when it came to the game of Skip-O, she'd cut your heart out. She'd cut your heart out. In fact, my daughters, my three daughters, when my mom passed in 14, they all put a deck of Skip-O cards in her casket. That's what they remember when they'd go back to Lyons, Kansas, that little town I'm from. So I admit, I was down. I was down. I mean, I like to win, but I have to put that front up, right, of positivity. I got to show that to my players. They need to know that everything's going to be okay, right? Now, I'm a math teacher. So next morning, I have first hour class, and I got to bring it now. I can't put a video in and show them, World War II. I'm teaching math. I got to show them how to solve an equation, how to factor a quadratic trinomial. We're working on math, correct? So I got to bring it. My first hour Algebra 2 class. So I'm teaching, and there's a knock on my door. It's my principal. He says, Donnie, can I say something to your class? Now, when an administrator comes to your door, first thing in the morning, what do you think I'm thinking? What in the heck have I done now? I just got beat by 20 the night before. Now what have I done? He says, Donnie, can I say something to your class? I said, sure. He gets up in front of my class. And he said, kids, we're so fortunate here to have the best basketball coach in Kansas. He's a terrific math teacher, and he's a better person. Now, you don't think I didn't need to hear that after that 20-point drubbing the night before? You don't think I wouldn't run through a wall for that guy? You bet I would. It's so easy for all of us, isn't it, as leaders, when things are going well, to speak greatness in people, correct? Right? What about when things aren't going well, as it was for me? Are you that beacon of hope as a leader? Do you speak greatness into your team when things aren't going well? Correct? As that principal did for me. And I knew, no matter what, and does your team know, no matter what, that you believe in them? Thank you so very, very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.